Welcome everyone! Today's explainer fundamentally changes how we view one of our most common everyday struggles, the true hidden cost of procrastination. By the end of our time together, you're going to look at your to-do list in a completely different light. We aren't just talking about missing a deadline today, we're looking at the invisible toll that delaying our lives takes on our minds, and honestly our futures. Let's get right into it.
Before we really get into the weeds, I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. Do you think procrastinating is just a time management problem? You know, when you put off that massive work presentation, or delay doing your taxes, or wait to start that new fitness routine, do you just tell yourself, oh, I'm just bad at managing my schedule, or maybe I just need a better planner? We usually imagine procrastination simply means delaying tasks or dropping the ball on obligations. But the source material we're analyzing today argues that this is a massive, massive misconception.
Okay, let's dive into this. We all buy into the myth that procrastination is just a productivity problem. But the reality? It's far more dangerous. It actually destroys your identity. The source text makes a profoundly important point here. Procrastination doesn't just destroy your results, it literally erodes who you are at a core level. Every single time you make an agreement with yourself and you fail to follow through, something happens silently within your own psychology. You aren't just pushing a task to Tuesday, you are fundamentally altering your relationship with yourself.
I'll start tomorrow. I'll fix it later. Or maybe, you know what? Now just isn't the right moment. Take a look at these phrases. We've all whispered these exact things to ourselves, right? But when we repeat this pattern countless times, we aren't just harmlessly kicking the can down the road. We are feeding our subconscious a steady diet of broken internal promises. Think about it. If you had a friend who constantly told you they were going to do something and then never actually did it, you'd stop trusting them entirely. Well, the exact same thing happens internally.
And that leads us to an incredibly dangerous internal message. I don't do what I say I will do. When your brain registers this over and over, little by little, your self-confidence completely evaporates. You start to develop an internal image of incompetence. You literally stop believing your own word. You start living in this constant state of self-doubt, not because you lack the skills or the capability, but simply because you've disappointed yourself so many times that you can no longer trust your own ability to execute. This is how procrastination silently transforms your greatest dreams into nothing more than permanent, unrealized intentions.
Now you might be wondering, but putting things off feels kinda good in the moment. Well, that relief is entirely an illusion. The task still exists. The problem is still waiting for you. The responsibility remains firmly on your shoulders. You haven't made anything disappear, you've really just transferred it to your future self. And because of this, the procrastinator rarely ever truly rests. You might be sitting on the couch trying to enjoy the weekend, but that silent guilt, it's hovering right over you, completely ruining your moments of leisure and blocking any real emotional recovery.
This creates what we call the anxiety loop. Let's walk through this together because it's absolutely crucial. Think about that tough conversation with a coworker you've been putting off. Step 1. You avoid the task because it makes you uncomfortable. Step 2. That delay instantly generates anxiety. Step 3. That anxiety actually spikes your overall discomfort. And finally, step 4, because you're now even more uncomfortable, you trigger even more avoidance. The more you run away, the harder it feels to take action. And the harder it feels, well, the more you run. It's a self-feeding cycle where the problem is no longer the task itself, but the massive emotional wall you've built around it.
To really visualize what this does to your brain, our source uses a fantastic analogy. It's like a computer crashing from hundreds of open background programs. When you leave a task unfinished, it occupies psychological space. Everything that still needs to be resolved demands a tiny piece of your active energy. So even if you spent the whole day lying in bed doing absolutely nothing, you still feel completely exhausted. Why? Because your brain is desperately trying to monitor dozens of open, unresolved loops in the background.
And the symptoms of this mental overload, they're severe. Your overall mental capacity drastically decreases. You experience a profound loss of focus. Your clarity just vanishes. And the ultimate result is severe exhaustion. You're draining your mental battery not by doing the work, but by constantly calculating the weight of the work you are avoiding. It is a massive tax on your daily cognitive function.
All this mental overload eventually builds into something even more destructive: self-sabotage. Now, many people think they fail because they simply aren't capable enough, but the text redefines this completely. Self-sabotage isn't about lacking ability. It's failing because you're trapped in the habit of delaying, which forces you to execute far below your true potential. People leave everything to the 11th hour. They arrive totally unprepared. They miss golden opportunities, and then they invent excuses to explain away the bad result.
But the failure didn't happen when they handed in the bad work. Actually, scratch that. It happened weeks earlier, the exact moment they decided to delay.
Because of this self-sabotage, consistent inaction causes the future to feel like a stagnant illusion. Think about how we build a sense of purpose in life. We build it by seeing progress, right? By feeling movement, by noticing our own growth. But if you live a life of constant delay, you spend years imagining beautiful changes that just never materialize. The future stops feeling real. Your goals start to feel utterly impossible. You're left with a suffocating feeling of stagnation, a terrifying sense that the years are just slipping by without any real transformation.
And here is a warning from the text that we absolutely cannot ignore. Avoiding tasks actually destroys your emotional tolerance for all discomfort. Every single time you flee from a difficult task, you are literally training your brain to run away from hardship. Over time, your emotional resistance drops to zero. Suddenly, tiny, normal challenges start to look like insurmountable mountains. Replying to a simple text message feels like defusing a bomb. A piece of constructive criticism feels like a massive, life-ending threat. Procrastination doesn't just help you avoid suffering in the short term, it systematically destroys your capacity to handle life's inevitable friction.
Of course, making this all so much worse are the modern escape routes we have right at our fingertips. Social media scrolling, watching videos, binging series, consuming entirely random content just to numb the mind. It has literally never been easier to escape discomfort. The second your brain encounters even a tiny bit of friction or resistance on a task, it knows it has a reliable, immediate escape route right in your pocket. But the problem is that immediate pleasure and deep, meaningful fulfillment rarely occupy the same space. Growth requires effort, transformation requires discomfort.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely flips our understanding of how work actually gets done. The flawed belief is that motivation has to come before action. We tell ourselves, I'll do it when I feel inspired, or I'll start when I have the energy. But the reality is the exact opposite. Action comes before motivation. This is the greatest illusion of procrastination, the belief that we must wait for the emotional desire to strike before we can physically begin. The source text makes it unequivocally clear. If you wait to feel like doing something difficult, you're going to be waiting forever.
So the true order of progress works like this. Action produces motivation. Movement produces energy. Progress produces enthusiasm. People who start acting despite feeling zero desire to do so almost always discover that the motivation magically appears during the process of working. The solution to procrastination isn't figuring out how to feel more motivated, it's learning how to act before you feel anything at all.
Which brings us to the core realization of this entire explainer. The true battle is against fleeing discomfort, not against the clock. Stop fighting your calendar. Stop searching for a magical productivity app. Your fight is with your own emotional regulation. True transformation in your life will only begin the exact moment you stop negotiating with delay. The moment you stop waiting for the perfect conditions. The moment you stop relying on some mythical future version of yourself to handle the things the present version of you is just too scared to face.
I want to leave you with this final haunting thought from our source material. Procrastination isn't just stealing hours, it is stealing years. Every time you put your life on hold to avoid temporary discomfort, you aren't just losing an afternoon, you are slowly sacrificing the life you could have built. The power to change that narrative doesn't start tomorrow. It starts with the very next action you choose to take today, without waiting for the motivation to do it. So, I leave you with this question. If you finally stop running from discomfort today, what exactly are you capable of achieving by next year?